What's going on, everyone? Happy Sunday to everyone. Hopefully everyone is doing well, staying safe, healthy. If you had to take a COVID test, hopefully you have tested negative. If you did test positive, I hope you have a full and speedy recovery with no long-term issues. Time now for the Sunday edition of the Pandemic Update for Sunday, December 17th, 2023. Yes, you heard me correctly. We are not doing a regularly scheduled wastewater update today, which was planned. Instead, we're doing something that I have been thinking about doing for quite some time. It needs to be done. I don't have time to do the wastewater update today. It's a gray day outside. It's raining here. Good day for deliveries. And you know what? The weather really fits the sign of the times. A lot of people are testing positive right now. And you always hear me say at the beginning of my videos, if you tested positive, I hope you have a full and speedy recovery. Let's dive deeper today into the testing positive part. There seems to be a lot of confusion about what should you do when you get sick. Test positive for COVID. It could be any virus, to be honest with you. When you get sick with any virus, main focus today, of course, is COVID. There does not seem to be clear messaging from the CDC, the WHO, the government, anybody. And I'm going to give you my version of the messaging, of what I would say if I was personally the director of the CDC or director of the WHO. So here it is. A lot of people are testing positive right now. I mean, we're doing north of 1 million cases a day of COVID in the United States, and that's not including all the other viruses out there. COVID is a highly transmissible disease. It's a disease that we want to try and limit the spread of as much as possible. The more COVID spreads, the more chances are new variants could mutate. One variant mingles with another variant, and yes, it could become a disaster. And at some point in time, I really hate to say it, at any moment, COVID could, at the blink of an eye, turn to a more severe variant. Who remembers Delta? Yeah, that was a bad one. Who remembers Wuhan 1.0, where everyone's was getting these chest x-rays were coming in, and there was white lungs showing up. I mean, it was really bad. At any time, we could go back to something more severe. Not to say right now it's not severe, because remember, COVID hits everyone different. When you test positive for COVID, maybe you'll have no symptoms. Maybe you'll have minor symptoms. Maybe you'll have mild to moderate symptoms. I hate that word mild. I wish I didn't say it. Let's just say less severe. Maybe you end up with a severe case and you're hospitalized. It can really hit everyone different. So, the moment you test positive for COVID, you should have a plan ready. You know how when a hurricane is going to come to the United States, or there's going to be a tornado, and you have an emergency plan at the ready? You should have an emergency plan at the ready for when COVID occurs in your household. Example, you should have mask on hand. You should have testing on hand. You should know what you're going to do when you test positive. And when I say having tests on hand, if you go to the pharmacy and they say, you know, we ran your insurance and we see you qualify for free COVID tests. Please, I saw this when I went to get my Novavax booster. Please do not say, oh, I don't need those tests, COVID are over. No, you need those rapid at-home tests on hand. That way, if you test positive, you can then call up your doctor and get started on an antiviral treatment, such as Paxlovid or another antiviral. You should have a plan for that. If you test positive, you know you're going to have to isolate for at least 5 days. And we'll go deeper into that 5-day rule in just a minute and why I think the CDC is wrong. But first off, you need to call your doctor and say, hey, I tested positive for COVID. Do you think I would be a good candidate for Paxlovid or another antiviral? I obviously have your medical records. They know what your medical history is. They know, or they should know, what's going to happen. Now, in some cases, you may encounter a doctor that is a minimizer and say, oh, don't worry, COVID's just a cold right now. No. If you know you're immunocompromised, or you know you have a past history where, you know, COVID could bring out your weakest point and it could hit you hard, try and get on an antiviral. Now, I know this day and age, sign of the times is the fact that, hey, you may have to pay out of pocket for Paxlovid. It's the sad, honest truth. But if you can swing it and you can get an antiviral, get on there. It reduces your chances of having a severe case of COVID. The only thing I can tell you is you have to be careful now. And again, this is why I say make sure you have as many at-home tests as possible. There is the risk you could have a rebound case with Paxlovid or another antiviral. Now let's talk about that staying home rule. When you test positive for COVID, that's it. You have to stay home. I know someone who tested positive for COVID just a couple of years ago at the beginning of the BA.1 Omicron wave. We were on the backside of that wave. He was not feeling well. He had a sinus infection. He says, "Oh, I thought I just had a sinus infection." Doctor runs a COVID test and says, "Oh, no, you have COVID. You have to miss work. You have to stay home in quarantine." He's like, "Oh, I feel well enough to go to work. Ooh, I'm fine. I can go to work tomorrow." Doctor says, "No, I'm giving you a doctor's note. You're staying home. You're staying home for the 5-day period." So he did. He stayed home for the 5-day period, and eventually he went back to work. Here's the deal, though. CDC is saying 5 days. 5 days is not good enough. Now, I get it. If you don't have paid sick time, you may have to go to work. You may have to go to work wearing a mask after 5 days. I get it. That's what you have to do. Times are hard. Things are expensive. Income. Yes. People, you have maybe raising a family. It's going to affect you differently. In your situation, if that's really what you have to do, you have to get back to work, then fine. But if you can stay home and quarantine longer than 5 days, it really should be about when you test negative. Some people are going to test negative after just a few days. Some people, it's going to be well more than 5. It's going to be 7 days, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, maybe longer than 2 weeks. There have been random cases where people test positive for week after week after week. Remember how I said, make sure you have a lot of tests on hand? There's precisely the reason why, because maybe it spreads throughout the whole household, and you all need to continuously keep testing to find out when you're negative. Well, in that case, you're going to want to have a lot of tests on hand. Something else that you need to do, and there's no real clear way to report these at-home tests. If you can get one, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. You need to get a PCR test, and that's good for many reasons. Number one, it goes to the health department, and with it going to the health department, it records and it helps give us a better understanding of how many cases there are out there. Also, when you test positive on a PCR test, it goes onto your medical record. Should you have long COVID issues, long-term issues, they can then see on your medical record, hey, you had COVID. COVID was part of your issue, and maybe they can investigate further as to whether or not COVID is causing a new long-term issue that you may receive after COVID. So again, let's repeat these steps. You test positive, you tell your doctor immediately, you try and get on an antiviral if you want to. If you feel you don't want to go on an antiviral, that's fine too. Just make sure you follow do some research. Keep yourself well hydrated. Make sure you get plenty of rest. That is very important. When quarantining, even when you're done, don't rush back into an active fitness life. Maybe you're someone that likes to bike ride. Maybe you like to go for a morning jog. Don't rush back into that. Give your body as much rest as possible. The more rest you give your body, the better chance you will have of not dealing with long-term COVID issues and not going on into long COVID. You don't want long COVID. It's really bad. I'm lucky I only had a less severe case of long COVID. There's some people that get it really bad. So, again, if you test positive, quarantine until you're eventually negative. Because remember, and this goes for if you are asymptomatic. Remember, COVID may be asymptomatic to you. You could pass it on to someone else, and they become symptomatic and end up getting a severe case. It's fairly simple. Quarantine until you are negative. Okay, and should it become a really rainy day where the whole household becomes positive, well then in that case, everybody needs to quarantine, and that's right, your child needs to stay home from school. You can't be sending your child to school sick. They need to quarantine as well, because that's part of the reason why these school outbreaks get so bad. You have one person go in, then the whole class gets infected, then it continues on, and in most cases, it's more than one kid coming into school. Say you have a school with 1,000 kids, 10 people come in positive, and maybe they go into, let's just say, 5 different classrooms, then they mix and mingle in the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the auditorium. Suddenly 10 cases becomes dozens, hundreds of cases, because clean air. Not all schools have clean air. So in those cases, your child, you need to do it somehow, your child needs to quarantine until he is negative. Alrighty, folks, that's all I have for you today here on this very wet and rainy day here in Pennsylvania. If I missed anything, we'll probably do another updates of these down the line. And just remember, I do want to add one more thing. You may not always have a rebound case right away. It may take some time. So what you want to do, if you're on an antiviral, you want to have multiple negative tests. Take one, then take another one a couple days later. And just for the heck of it, 5 days later, take another negative test. Alrighty, that's all I have for you today. We'll do another video again tomorrow. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to my channel down below. If you have a comment, maybe you want to add a tip of your own to this, by all means, leave that down below. And if you know anyone that needs to see this advice on what to do if you test positive, by all means, share this with them. I will see you all again next time. Until I see you again next time, stay safe and test negative.